Cool, thanks for joining. So we are at the top of the hour, so let's get started. Normally a few more people will be joining as we get started, but you're here and that is the most important thing, so we will get started. If you have questions or comments, do put them into the Q&A section. There's a blue button at the bottom of your screen where you can enter these questions, and then we'll try to cover them during the session. And there is already one or something like that. No. Yes, Matthias, that is correct. Thank you for reminding. We'll start the recording.
This webinar is being recorded.
I guess Michael, you will handle that. Thanks. So yes, we will get started. Thanks for Matthias for reminding. So the idea is that we want to be able to make it easy to migrate from Neo to Integration Suite and Cloud Foundry as that is going on. What is actually the important things with this, and so that is what we want to do. And I guess you probably have this as a requirement also coming up on what is actually going on and what you can do. And some of the things we'll cover today is, I think this is an excellent opportunity to clean up your landscape, understanding what you can actually transport the content, how do you handle all these security and other artifacts, and then how to get started. So we started out 7 years ago about creating a tool to make it easier to do to create test cases for SAP PI, and then it just expanded, and there's a lot of new features, and we are continuously adding, making the process even bigger. And we did have a session both on the DevOps of cloud integration 2 weeks ago, I think, like that. On the FIGAF/webinar, you can see that webinar, and we will be referring to a lot of that DevOps process because that is an important part of this. And then we also talked about the PI to CPI migration last week. So yeah, if you go to FIGAF/webinar, you can see these replays for this. We do have when I talk about this for this scenario, I've been talking a lot about, so what is it that actually we have, and now it's migration journey, primarily focusing on the PI to Integration Suite migration. That's an important part of this. And the idea here is obviously for you, this is probably not important at the moment. If it is, check the last week's replay. It is on the website. The thing that is more important, this is this cloud integration DevOps, and this is what we will be using today to make the migration easier. And I think before you start migration, it would be beneficial to have Integration Suite, because otherwise you are going to have to do first a migration of all your integration to cloud integration, and then you need to migrate it into Integration Suite, and that's just a lot of extra steps. I do see that obviously I think this is some of the challenges that we have. There's some license issues making it a little more interesting to stay on the new licenses. I could imagine some of you also have these older licenses that is a lot better value than if you move to the Integration Suite, but you also have some kind of a limit on how long time they are going to work. I think SAP wrote that there is a 2027 deadline on the Neo tenants and when that would be deprecated, and that is obviously of an importance. And I guess the idea is, right now SAP will release a new version of the Neo or the Camel runtime, but then I could also imagine that they will stop doing a lot of investment on the Neo platform, because Integration Suite is where everything happens and where you can see a lot more going on. So license the pricing difference if you're coming from the old 600-800 euro license to a 4,000 license per tenant really makes a big difference in your scenario. Another challenge is you need to test this together with the business. You will need to update all of the external systems. So obviously updating your SAP systems probably not that big of a deal, but going through all your partners will be a lot more challenging to set up. And then obviously we need some project management on this. And I guess as with all these good projects, you need some time and some resources to put into it. Oh, next. So I think if you're going on this journey, it is really useful to start cleaning up, start going through this is a good way to expand and if you have had just put in the question is that if you have been using Integration Suite for a long time, you have had multiple different custom or partners working on, you have different ideas, visions of this, and this means that there's a lot of problems with, or there potentially are a lot of problems with your integration, and you probably have had file transports, you have doing copying between QA and production. All of this just makes the flow a lot more challenging, and that means that you essentially end up with having a lot of integration you don't really know what is and why you have. And what's the naming convention, what's going on. And I do think that this is the time that you want to clean up. You want to get a clean slate and start working with an empty system without any changes into it. Then Integration Suite is there for the next 10-15 years. And the more you know about how you're running it in Neo, the better and the easier it will be for you to manage these things. How many object versions are identical? So a lot of times when I have been working with customers and they have configured the tool, then one of the things that I can see is we run this report, and this report gives you an idea about what is the difference between your dev, your QA, production tenant, and with this you will be able to see what's going on. And some of the things you can see here is that it says here we have a design time version that is different than our deploy time version. I've seen places where they had a draft version, and then I think they had a draft version in here, and there was deployed another version. And these are some of the things that just make it into older systems. So that is the reason why I believe it is a good idea to clean up and get a clean slate, get that this is how we do it, and then have this more stringent naming convention processes afterwards. Questions? Just put them into the Q&A. So what is the ideal architecture? And obviously this is some of my ideas for what could be really useful, and I think you should obviously be look at what is it that you currently have in your integration system, and then does the future look for you in terms of integration? Do you have a PI to CPI migration going on? Do you expect to get more integration, and what type of integrations do you have? And are you considering moving to other platforms, moving from other platforms, and how will that affect your integration landscape? Because there's going to be a lot of new processes going on to help with these things. Some of my thinkings on this, and obviously this is something that you should just take with my ideas. It really depends on what strategy, what would fit into you. I do like to have some kind of a prefix knowing what are the business area or what makes sense for this. We should have some names that make sense for your organization. I also like to have, I can see a lot of benefit in having a number for each interface. So that means, or number range or something like that, that makes it a lot easier for you to find, oh, this is about interface 250 instead of it's a Salesforce to success factors, business object, or cost center replication that is different from some other flows. And because these long names just becomes difficult finding and going back and forth and searching, and thereby names make it, or numbers make some of these things a little easier. I also enjoy to have the development object and production object being the same without this dev prefix. And I know a lot of you have been using, and I think that's probably the next one, this process about having a two-tier landscape, have both a QA and dev on the same system, and the only way you determine it is by adding the pre and post fixes for it. And then obviously you need to define your objects in a logical way for you based on these four criteria. So what is it that you're actually expected to be delivering over the next period of time? I think, an interesting, are you using numbers as in your interface names? Then just raise your hand or click on the thumbs up, so I just have some idea about, is that something that is relevant, or is this just me that are thinking about these things? Cool, thanks. Yes, good. I just talked about this virtual tenant, and when you were in the Neo, it wasn't so expensive in most cases to have 2 or 3 tenants, because it was 800 euros a month, depending on your scope that was going on. With Integration Suite, it becomes a lot more, and this obviously depends about whether or not your landscape, what's going on, what is your ambition. I would say if you have and expect less than 200 interfaces, then a 2-tier setup should be fine. 2 different tenants, one for QA and one for production, or one for development QA and the other one for production. The process and tool would also allow you to actually just have 1 tier, but I do think that when you're dealing with just 1 tier, you are sacrificing quite a lot. But I do know that some customers are using just 1 tier. I would not recommend it, but on the other hand, it can be a good step in the way of getting started and say, okay, well, once we got to 50 integration, it would make sense then to migrate into a separate tenant, so you have an idea of what's going on. The most places I've been in have been using this process about reusing a tenant, where they have copied object, changed a dev postfix to a dev or QA prefix, these kind of things. And this is some of the things that makes the process a little more challenging to get through and understand, okay, so what is it that we can do? And the challenge is that once you have copied this object into QA, it is still a development object, which means you can actually make modifications to it. So that means once you're transporting from dev to production, what are the version you're actually transporting, and are you copying between these ones? So that is the challenge with this copying and pasting. With the FIGAF tool, you can do the same kind of transports, no matter what kind of object it is. And this just makes the process so much simpler, because we have the full suite. We can handle all of these different scenarios. So what is if you could have the same kind of governance that you would need otherwise to have a 3-tier tenant for, but only needed 2? Then it is, well, one of the big savings of the FIGAF tool, if you just say one tenant, it is 4,000 euros a month. So that is well worth the licensing cost and operations. So now we have decided that we want to do the migration. We want to go in and we want to change some of our integration content. And we're going to move to our new integration suite. And when I say Neo, it can also be well, I don't know if it's a deprecated Cloud Foundry, but the Cloud Foundry instances that are running by itself, those instances also have the same challenges, and you cannot really do much with them. So it is about moving all of your content from, and I recommend that you go from production to the new development environment, because that would mean at least this is what the customer, the partner has expected to deal with, and that makes it a little easier. And then obviously once you have moved everything from the new dev, you can consider, okay, so are there anything there's work in progress that we need to move into the integration. And as a part of the moving from to the new dev, it is also a good idea to rename objects. So you're making sure that you are following this new naming conventions that you want to have, that just makes the process so much simpler to maintain over an extended period of time. And then, you want to apply configurations with host names, all of these different things. You potentially also want to have approval, just so you have two eyes that we have been through all these externalized properties to see if everything was correct. So my idea is move from development, from production to new development, and then move up in the new landscape. So this is what we'll see. SAP has an alternative. They have long been promoting this Postman collection, and it is quite a useful tool, and you should definitely also have that. And I think the last thing they also did was this Node.js application that would allow you to do these kind of migration of content. And I think it is also quite a useful tool to get started and use in your process. It has some checks also to see if you are doing some strange codes, and there's a link here if you wanted. Just click the link in the comments. So good ideas, and I think this blog post also links to the Postman collection and notes around that. So that is the SAP recommended processes. Do use them and consider with that would be useful for you. Okay, so let's talk about how you can actually move this and going through with these systems. So here we have the FIGAF tool. We do have a number of applications, and we'll not go through all of this as a part of this. We have here the change tracking tool, where we have the landscape overview. Here you can see a landscape, so you set up the dev, queue, and production. Then you can actually see what are the objects that we have in both systems, and we can go in and check this one, and we can see that there are some difference between these two tenants, and then we need to consider, okay, is it okay, or what do we want to deal with in these scenarios? But when we start out with migration, we'll go to this tab here. Here we can see, okay, we have some Neo to Cloud Foundry. So here we will set up the first transition. And it could also be a standalone Cloud Foundry environment you wanted to do here. The idea is you created the transport path from dev or from the production system to the new landscape. And then from this new landscape, you then have some different options that you can select about, okay, so how do we want to migrate this into this new setup? So right now I've selected, I have a number of of our iFlows here in my dev system, and this would also work for all the other artifacts that you have in your landscape. The idea is we can go in here and say, okay, we want to change the naming of these. These are some HTTP channels, so let's just go in and set a new naming convention on 201. I said 2, right? And we're going to add it also to the display name. We can do it same here. And let's just also add the 2, 3, and 2 in here. Just as a way to see what you can actually do with this. So the idea is we want to be able to rename these objects. We can also change packages, have the same options to handle packages, script collection, etc. So now we have configured these. We can then take these 2 objects and we can create a ticket for the migration. So this is using the normal FIGAF DevOps workflow, but where we both have renaming of different artifacts as a part of it. So you can set up that globally. If you need to remove all the prod one, you can do that. You can also go in and change externalized parameters. But the idea is we will create a new ticket that will take the transport from the dev to the productive system, or from the productive to the new integration suite system. So now I can import it here on the productive system. And we can see that they are now being prefixed. So let's hope it works. It is always much more fun to do live demos. You never know if you forgot to do a certain step in it. But now we can see it has been imported into our process. And we can see that it has prefixes here. If we open it, we will get into it and we can see, okay, so it has the 001, 003, and I think also the HTTP prefix was also modified. So we can see we were able to deal with this from out here in the transport overview. So the next thing is I do have my ticket here. Is that we can, let me just go back here in our transport and tickets. Here we have this ticket we just created. I don't know if I actually have some test cases. We can see we have some test cases here. We can take these. So with the FIGAF tool, it's easy to record messages. What you can then do is you can then run it on this new partner tenant. So let's see if it has been triggered here. It was the other one, so we'll just find it. So we can see this iFlow failed. There was some problems with it. Not really sure why it failed. Something sequential numbering. I think there we do have something in these with some process directs that fails. But anyway, we can come in here, we can see the result, and here we'll probably just see that it did process something and found some other messages. So now, most cases, it would work if you had some updated test cases or you created some from scratch. You would be able to run them, and you would be able to check that the iFlow still worked and it was running as expected. So that was the first part of it. So now we have moved these 2 iFlows into our dev environment. The next is we want to move it into our QA environment, and this is reusing the same tenant. So we'll just create a new ticket here for it. They will need to be licensed, these objects, because it's a new landscape. And here we then have the objects. We can then start our transport. And here in the transport, we can see it is transporting the package. And it is, and if we can then go in here, we can see that we have these externalized properties. For instance, if we have this host name here, we can easily go in the FigApp tool, make a search replace. That will ensure that this landscape will be translated to the correct one. So let's just do that. Just so we have an idea about it. So we have the landscape defined in here. We will, in the next release, move it a little out. So the idea was that this is from dev to QA. So we just add this. So it is a different one than up here. So we'll just here. Demo. So we are, so this is also, the idea is normally if you have S4 host names, etc., you can easily, you know that when you're moving this across the landscape, they will always be identical. So if we now reload, we can see here that it actually found that we need to replace this one for these parameters. So we can just say save. Now I can send this to approval. And as approval, we can also export all of these externalized parameters. If we need to make a lot of changes, we can upload this Excel report. So this is also a really useful tool to go through and figure out. So we have these parameters. This is the original value. This is the target value. Make the modification, save it, and then you can just upload it again without any problems. Or, making it possible for you to do batch imports. We'll send it to approval, and then we will approve it, and then we can import it. That means if we go back to our landscape, now we should see that these objects would soon be in the QA system with the QA prefix on it. So now we can see they are all here with the right values. And then it will be the same thing to move it into production. Here we can see it will then remove this QA prefix. So this is how the FigApp tool works, and the basis of this is the core DevOps process that would allow you to handle these things. So that also means that once you work from this, you can go in and you can figure and handle all of these different scenarios that you do have here. Making it faster for you to transport, export this as a CSV to document how far you are in the migration journeys, etc. But the idea is to make it as easy for you to understand what's going on, how far you are with these scenarios, and what is in production. Really easy to see. There's still open for questions, so if you have any, just put them into the Q&A section, then we'll try to cover those also. So that was what I wanted to just show you, how the FigApp tool can help you with these things. And I think comparing to these two, the idea is that you will clean up the integration. You will get some better processes to handle your SAP integration. And make it faster, more transparent, understand the process management part of this. Then there is some things that it becomes a little more challenging. This is, for instance, certificates. Here we have created an iFlow that you deploy on your PI system. And the idea here is that, or you deploy on one of the systems in your landscape. And what you can then do is reuse. It will extract all the different certificates, and then it will create service keys that you can use in Cloud Foundry. Because Cloud Foundry works in a little different way. There you need to create service keys and not, will you also add this block, Michael? and not the other process. And this makes it a little different of what it is that you actually want to achieve with these scenarios. But this is a good resource to go through and check out what is going on with these scenarios. If you have a lot of certificate, definitely recommend a process. The idea is you will get a command line for Cloud Foundry, then you can just go through and check out all of these different things. There's also the link in the description. There's also some other security artifacts, and here's a good block that shows you an iFlow that can extract these things. The idea is that you deploy this on the Neo tenant you want all the passwords for. It's not really an ideal approach for it, but I guess it is the only real way to get these passwords exported. So go through that one, export your passwords, and then you will be able to I think you could just import it via some APIs for these things. Obviously, you need to remember to undeploy it. You need to have some security in place, so not everybody with the message run would be able to process this. It's not really the recommended approach, but there's no real other way to go do this unless you have all of this in and you know that your password safe with all of these artifacts is correct. Then that is a way to do it. But yeah, I think this is the best approach for it. There's some other artifacts, there's some number ranges, and I think that the Postman collection will give you a good understanding of what needs to be done there. And obviously, you could also be using the data store for something, and you need to figure out, okay, so how do we actually deal with these things? You would obviously need to be doing some testing. So as I see it, the platforms are really much alike. There's not going to be a large difference between what you run in one system versus what you run in the other system. So it is a little easier for you to actually run these scenarios and see what is going on. And then obviously you need to check if something else has changed. You would need to check that you've got all the security artifacts configured. You will need to check all of these other artifacts. So testing should be a part of this. And I think, with the FIGAF tool, it is really easy to create test cases for your integration scenarios, be able to run them on the integration systems without involving the business. You can mock endpoints to see that everything works as you would expect it to. But I guess a large part of such a migration is also to test with partners and the business to see, did we remember to update all the places in the ERP system to point to the new Neo credentials, testing with the partners, making sure that firewalls, etc., are open and enable us to communicate via this approach. So both things you should be doing. At least the FIGAF part is more about, okay, so let's just check that we have checked and moved all the artifacts that is needed as a part of this. I did briefly mention the DevOps process as it is one of the key aspects of this tool that will allow you to handle transports in a seamless way. And here, one of the things that we do recommend, well, that's an integrated part, is our DevOps tool. This would allow you to do the governance, having approvals on these steps. It will virtualize your tenants, and I think this is by far the best value of it. But anyway, the governance and a lot of all of these transport processes, no matter if you have 3 tenants, you are still going to spend a lot of time with that. The alternative is to build your own DevOps process, and that is also going to take you a long time to build something like that, with this you get all in one box. It is just plug and play in like an hour. You have a new transport process that you can just enable and run for this. You want to review what's going on whenever you make changes. You want to be able to go back and see, okay, so why did we change this object? What was the difference between these two objects? Documentation, we have a Git repository if you want to have extended knowledge. We have a Groovy IDE editor, or XSLT editor, that just makes it so much easier for you to develop Groovy XSLT scripts as a part of this process. Because you are attending here, we do have an offer about that you can use our Migration Edition. This is the one that we are offering together with SAP to manage your SAP, or to manage and test your SAP PIPO to Integration Suite migration. You can also use that to test or to migrate up to 100 interfaces, iFlows with this. You have 2 months to do it. If this is something you want, sign up for the free Migration Edition. Will you add link to that one, Michael? And this is the extended version of our offering with a large trial. And here, once you have got started and are ready, give us a notice and we will increase this discount. If you just need, or if you need some more, check it out, see if it will help you, and then request a quote for it. So there is a difference between if you just want to use it like a few months, and then if you want to use it continuously. And we do obviously hope that you want to be using it continuously, because it is going to add a lot of value to the way you're dealing with your SAP integration. Cool. Okay, last one. Well, this is the different versions we have. This is the Migration Edition. That's free, that you can use to get started with this. We do have our DevOps Edition, and this is the one we do hope that you will end up with, that will give you a lot more than just this migration. It is about giving you a better way to work, better way of delivering your SAP-based integration. Regression testing, create test cases directly, run them, creating Git repository with all your versions, Groovy editors, etc. It's 10,000 euros a year for the first 100 iFlows, and then subsequent iFlows is less, 6,000 euros. And this, if you have a larger number, it also will be a bit cheaper per new integration. One thing, next week we are hosting the next episode of this, and here we'll talk about the DevOps for PIPO, and I think this is also really interesting. So even though you are starting the migration, if you have a large landscape, migration is going to take a long time. One of the ideas we want to work with in this is to make it easy for you to transport ICO's communication channels, be able to externalize these parameters, so you do not need to remember to, like you saw here with the host name. We can also do the same thing for in the communication channels. Just check out this the S4 host name. We'll just replace it when we import it into the QA system. And this just simplifies the process, making it a lot easier for you to deal with these scenarios. We also have something about if you need to rename a large number of objects. If you're doing an S4 project and you want to change the business component from ERP Dev to HANA Dev, then with a few clicks, you can actually rename all of your ICOs in that process. And that is also really fast and is something that will save you a lot of time on an S4 journey. And then it is about moving to new environments, larger reconfiguration, I guess it should be. And yeah, batch update of objects. So I do hope that you want to join that. We do have time for Q&A, and I think that is the next thing. So if you have any questions, comments, then put them into the Q&A section. I hope you also have seen all Michael's link to the different blog posts that we have to cover these topics. But that was all I wanted to say to you today. Yes, in this here you can also see the DevOps one, and this really relies heavily on DevOps because it is kind of the same thing, but there are some differences, like understanding the project, understanding having this extra rename step that is not a part of the normal DevOps process for these objects. And obviously this can also be used as a part of changing all of these places where you have a DevOps object, a PI object, a CPI object that is called _dev_qa and prod. This will also be some of the things that can be replaced with these scenarios. So it's quite intensive what we have for these things. Any questions, comments? Just put them into the chat, and I'll try to answer them as they get here. But other than that, I hope that this was what you are looking for, and I hope that I will see you again next week, where we will be talking a little more about the PI DevOps, which is also interesting. And I do see quite a few interesting names here. That thanks for attending. I hope you find this useful. So other questions, comments? Oops. So just I think when we showed the landscape here, so there's quite intensive settings that you can go in and do when you are configuring the landscape. Here is the landscape we have. Here we are saying function libraries should not have changed the way they are being named. That is wrong, and that's because this was added after we started with this, so I should be adding some new rules just like the other ones here. We can go in and we can add prefixes to objects, and then you have the same when you're moving it from it. You can also go in and say, okay, queue names, no action, or what should actually be changed here. So there's a lot of options for you to configure these scenarios as they get along. These things. Any other questions? Yeah, I would love to have shown a test case that worked for these scenarios. Next time I should prepare with a test case that I can run and will be able to run. But it was just some random objects I had selected, and I had not really made sure that this test case was up to date. And it could also be that the iFlow has changed quite a bit during this transition. So the way we can actually check this, and that is also one of the cool things about it, is we have here the different transitions. This was the first one I did, and here I can go in and say, okay, we have this iFlow. What is actually the difference between these ones? And here I would be able to see if there were any difference, but it is an object that is new in the landscape, so we need to check it in a little different way. We will actually just do it here. And this is also one of the ways that you would be able to, what was it, the name? Here, this one. So here you can go in and compare different objects and see what's the difference between these ones. So no object versions here. And we have a lot of different ways to do comparison to see what is wrong. So only a date was different. So that is good. So there must be something else that we forgot. So this was the dev version object of it that was not changed for the last couple of weeks. Good. Was there one more? No. Cool. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, just hit the like button. If you have questions, I'm still here. I do hope that you sign up for our next episode if you have already not done that. Otherwise, go sign up for the free Migration Edition. That will be a good place to start. You can also use the cloud version. That's also an easy way to get started with the FIGAF tool to understand how you can deal with your SAP integration. And obviously, the big benefit of something like this is just to reduce the time it takes to manage such a project that, I don't know, the value to the business is probably quite limited. It is something about consolidating on just one platform, making it easier for you to deliver, monitor, and manage your integration going forward. So thanks for attending.